Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue Podcast Network. This is the Blue Podcast. Oh, I just hit the wire. And today I'm with Kian. How you doing, mate?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Good. And also our guest today online is Charlie Slater. How you doing?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. One of those will be right. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. I know Kian's very excited to get started with this. Yeah. He's a Nottingham Forest fan, so...
Now, someone's got to be. It's not a bad time to be a Forest fan, is it?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
All right, so obviously you've done lots of things in your career so far, Charlie, but I want to kind of go from the start. When was it that you realised you wanted to work in football in the way that you are? Was there a moment, or did it just happen?
I kind of think that most people that work in football doing something that, commentary or anything like that, a lot of us are failed footballers, which I would have to include myself as. Like, obviously, the dream was to be a professional footballer, didn't work out. And then I remember going on work experience to BBC Radio Manchester. This was back in 2008 when you two would have been toddlers or something horrific that makes me feel old.
I was actually 8 years old, so that's not too bad.
You'd have been how old?
8, so that's not too bad.
Okay, 8, fine. And Kian, you would have been?
Well, I'm 20, so...
You would have been 3.
Oh, yeah, you're right for the toddler.
Don't even answer. We were practically a toddler. Anyway, I went on I went on work experience to Radio Manchester, and it was a time when there was a huge amount going on. It was a really warm summer, and Manchester United were good back then, and they played Barcelona in the Champions League semi-final. Lionel Messi was playing for Barca at the time, as was the likes of Iniesta and Xavi and Puyol and people like that. And so United played them in the semi-final, and ultimately went to Moscow and beat Chelsea in the Champions League final when John Terry slipped over.
Yeah, I'm a Chelsea fan, so it's quite a sensitive subject.
just had to.
Yeah.
And anyway, I say all of that to say that I was with the sports team. I was actually supposed to be doing a work experience that lasted 6 weeks across news, sport, and everywhere. But within the first couple of days, I made it, as clear as I could in the most polite way that I could, that I actually just want to do sport. And they allowed me to attach myself to the sports desk throughout that 6 weeks. And one of the things that I did was the then Manchester United correspondent took me to the Champions League semi-final press conference where Sir Alex Ferguson and Ryan Giggs were sat at the front, and I went and sat right at the back because there was clearly a pecking order, and there must have been 100 journalists in the room, from obviously the great and good in British journalism, but also from Catalonia, from the rest of from the wider world as well. And it was an amazing time, and I just remember feeling like, wow, I want some of this. And also, Rangers came to Manchester that summer for the Europa League Cup final, and I think they played Zenit St. Petersburg, and Zenit would have beaten them. But Rangers brought like 120,000 people to Manchester, and it was a red hot day. And I remember thinking, my goodness, look at what sport's about, and I want some of that. And if you can't be a professional footballer or a professional athlete, then I guess the next best thing is to work in it and cover it. And I'm very fortunate to say that that's what I do.
Yeah, so obviously you are a commentator. Did you have any, watching football growing up and stuff, did you have any commentators that you kind of inspired you in some sense, if that makes any sense at all?
Yeah. I mean, my dad is a huge football fan, but particularly a huge advocate and lover of the radio medium of commentary. So when it came to the TV, kind of, Martin Tyler was almost the be-all, end-all, and Clive Tildesley, and two people that I have a huge amount of admiration for, two very different commentators. But from a TV perspective, they were everywhere. And then beyond that, when it came to the radio, on 5 Live, you had great names, Ingham and Green, and then coming through John Murray and Ian Dennis, who incredibly fortunate to call colleagues now, and they were people that I looked up to. Didn't I guess as a kid didn't realize I looked up to, but just liked their turn of phrase and their use of the English language. Peter Drury gets a lot of, both credit, to which I agree with, and criticism nowadays, which I don't necessarily agree with, for how he can make football commentary poetry, almost. And that sort of the way that they utilize the English language and the turn of phrase and things like that was always something that I admired. And I think it was the great Peter Jones, who was at Hillsborough. I remember my dad playing me this. This was way before I was ever thinking of, doing anything to do with football commentary or working in the media. But I remember him playing me the sports report considered 45 seconds that he did from Hillsborough. And it just always stuck with me, the power of words. And if you haven't heard that, like, my goodness, go and listen to it. It is, I'm sure, available on YouTube, where he talks about, the gymnasium is a mortuary and the so-and-so is a mortuary. And he ended it with, and the sun shines now. And it's just beautifully eloquent, that captured everything. And, just little moments like that always stuck with me and always made me want to, I guess, inspire me and explore how far I could go with it.
Yeah, and with commentary as well. I mean, as you said, it's sort of an art, and with most art forms, you have to practice and learn. But I guess with commentary, you kind of are just thrust into it, and you have to kind of learn on the spot. How quickly did you adapt to that sort of lifestyle and doing commentary at the start?
It's an obsession, commentary, because you can't really ever switch off. So you're always watching and always listening. And how do they do things? And how does that person do things? That sort of stuff. When you try to get your 10,000 hours in, and I heard Ian Dennis say this, and Deno said this to me. The day that you do a perfect commentary is the day that you retire, because no one's ever going to do the perfect commentary. And you can over listen to yourself sometimes and end up listening for mistakes, which I don't think is necessarily healthy. And it's something that I do to myself to this day. But I started at nobody else wanted to do this game, and why will quickly become apparent. It was Workington Town against Mansfield Town in the final qualifying round of the FA Cup, online only on the BBC Sport website back in 2012, and nobody else wanted to go. Either of you, out of curiosity, do you know where Workington is?
I don't.
No, can't say I do.
Amazed if you did. No, it's a tiny town in the middle of Cumbria somewhere. So a beautiful part of the world, but not easy to get to unless you live next door. And so I went up there and did my first commentary there, and just kind of did what I thought a commentary should sound like. And it went well, and they gave me more opportunities from there. And I've done probably 800 games now, something like that, of full live commentary, and I am still so very much learning. There are certain things in a commentary that I think are the kind of staples of the must-haves. If you're doing a radio commentary, what way are they kicking? What colour are they playing in? How long's gone? What is the score? And you almost can't say those two details enough.
Yeah.
That people want to, if you talk to bosses at Five Live or wherever, they might want to know what the score is and how long's gone every 2 or 3 minutes or so. You can't say it enough. So it's there are certain things in your commentary that you have boxes to tick each time, and you'll reprise the team news shortly after kickoff. You'll trail ahead to what's going on, and what commentaries and coverage might well be to come. But then the rest of it is kind of your own canvas to paint, and that's why I think radio commentary in particular, but TV commentary as well, is such an art, because it's everyone's own interpretation, which also makes it very subjective on the ear of the person that's listening or watching, because some people like certain things and some people don't.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you mentioned Peter Drury a few minutes ago, and you see before his commentary, he'll do massive pages of notes. So his research going into the game, is that something you try and do, or do you have your own kind of sway on it and have your own research?
Everybody's got their own. Everybody's got their own way of doing things. There are certain strands of it which are kind of commonalities that run across commentators. But you want to, as a bunch, we're kind of a nerdy bunch. And I did the Women's League Cup final on Saturday for Five Live, and was sat in the press room, sat next to Joe Shannon, and Joe is commentator for Talk Sport, and we were commentating, comparing how he researches and how I research. But yeah, I mean, depending on for that game, I probably did 12 hours worth of research. I'm doing a game this weekend for IMG and Sky Sports that is on two clubs that I've not seen for a while. I'll probably do somewhere around 15 or 16 hours worth because when it came to the Women's League Cup last Saturday, I've seen both clubs, Chelsea and Manchester City, in recent weeks. When it comes to this weekend, I'm doing Swindon against Accrington Stanley. I've not seen Swindon play for a while, nor Accrington for that matter.
Yeah.
I've not been to Swindon since the day that they relegated Notts County back in 2018, I think. 2019.
Yeah.
I'll do huge amounts, but everybody's different. I have little stickers. And on that sticker, I've got my notebook upstairs. I should have brought it down. On these stickers, I will have the player's number, the player's name, how many appearances they've made this season, how many goals they've scored, when was the last time that they scored, what else? How many yellows they've got? When was the last time they got sent off? How old they are? What academy that they came through? What country they're born in if they're not from England? And then other just little interesting bits. Have they scored 6 in 8? Or, for instance, I did Grimsby against Notts County last week for Sky Sports, and Curtis Thompson played for Grimsby against Notts. Now, Curtis Thompson is an academy product of Notts County who was sold, not even sold, he just was allowed to go to Wickham. And he had never played against Notts. In all the years that he had left the football club, 7 or 8 years ago, never had he once come up against his boyhood club since. So that was another little thing that made the sticker. And I put the stickers out in the formation. And then that is handy because if I've got the formation wrong, I can change it. And also when you bring on a substitute, you can just bang the next sticker down on top of the one that was there already.
Nice. And I kind of want to take it back to your dad as well. When you did your first Five Live commentary, was that quite a big achievement for you in terms of, how your dad says he's, massive about radio commentary, and then to be able to do it for Five Live, which is arguably the biggest in the UK. How was that? What was that moment like for you?
Yeah, I'd knocked on the door for a long time, trying to. Yeah, and initially I was just, I still do a lot of the reporting side of things with Five Live. So I would say my predominant role with the company is I'm at grounds, and you give those quick fire updates, you interview managers, that sort of stuff, and it's all part of the fastest goal service around. And I dream to be able to one day get to where like a John Murray and an Ian Dennis is and things like that. And with that comes development opportunities to do games for Five Live, for Five Sports Extra, things like that. And with that in mind, I have, forgive me, I'm distracted. A text has literally just come through from one of the schedulers at Five Live offering a game. I'll be at Wolves Tottenham on the 13th of April. It was something I'd chased. And, there's a real balance to this, fellas. You want to keep contact with them, and you want to kind of keep knocking on a door, but you don't want to be a pain in the backside at the same time. And there's a real balance, it's a tricky balance to that. And I don't know how quite to establish that balance or any advice on it, but it's a big part of it. And then not being disheartened when the opportunity doesn't come immediately. Probably took 4 or 5 years for me finally to come for a game to come my way, from my initial contact with Five Live to when they sent me to do Derby County against West Brom, just a reporting game. Who's the Derby fan? Who's a West Brom fan?
No, he's a Forest fan, so he doesn't like Derby. Yeah, I'm a Chelsea fan, so.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. It felt like, okay, great. That's a real breakthrough. I better not mess it up. and I didn't. And I've probably done a couple of hundred reporting games for Five Live since then in the last 3 years or so. But it's now I'm always very. My wife says this. I'm like that giraffe that is constantly chasing the leaf that he's never going to get on that tree. Do you know what I mean? So that's my constant thing is great. Glad that I've managed to achieve that. What's next? And I guess it'll always be that way until I get to where I hope I can get to. And there's no guarantees. Just going to keep my nose clean, keep working hard, be as well researched and diligent as I possibly can. But yeah, it is a dream to work for Five Live. Like it's not lost on me. It does feel incredibly prestigious, and you get to work with some amazing people.
So I want to take you back to your Notts County days of commentary. And when someone mentions the name Charlie Slater to Notts fans, I think one moment comes up, and it's that playoff semi-final where Jody Jones scored in the last minute. 'Cause there's that clip of you that went quite viral of your commentary piece. What was going through your mind that day? And is it something you look back on a lot?
It's not something I look back on a lot, but when I do, I genuinely, it's one of my favorite days of my life. Like it was. I can. There are so many things I wish I could tell you more about, detailed things that I wish I could remember around the birth of my children and when they were young and things like that. And yeah, I can't, but I can tell you almost every detail about that day. It's weird. From where I was that morning to saying goodbye to my wife and kids after we'd been at like kids gymnastics, and then going to Meadow Lane and the sun was shining and it felt like a really important day, and you were taken to the depths of despair because despite how brilliant Notts had been all season, they were woeful that day in so many areas. And yet they managed to find a way, as they did in the playoff final as well. They were poor in the entire. I think the stat was that they led for something crazy, like they might have been level for 2 minutes or 3 minutes of the entire playoffs because they conceded early against Boreham Wood, and then the same in the final against Chesterfield. But it was an amazing day. Genuinely, it was an amazing, amazing day. And it's funny, I mentioned my dad before about the Five Live thing. My dad was there that day, sitting at the back of the press box, listening and just watching the game. He nearly missed it because he got the kickoff time wrong. I remember thinking, like, where is he? And he was like, oh, I don't, maybe it was a 12:30 kickoff. He was like, I thought it was a 1 o'clock kickoff. So he was late, but fortunately he didn't miss any of the good action anyway. It was an amazing, amazing day. And yeah, it's up there as one of my favorite days in my career. And it was made brilliant by the story. We'd gone through COVID, and everybody had been locked out, apart from a few very lucky people that were able to go and broadcast it and work obviously at it. And I count myself among those. I was able to do it with one of my great friends in Mark Stallard, and obviously us jumping around like idiots
Each other.
was a good reflection, I guess, of our friendship. And it was, you don't realize it, you never think about it, but I've spent so much time with him, in the car. You got to bear in mind, we went to Fylde 3 times for one game, because it got postponed twice after we'd got there. Like Fylde's 3 hours there, 3 hours back. We went to Dover 3 times for one game. Dover's 4.5 hours there and 4.5 hours back, and you spend all that time in the car together, and you develop this great friendship, and it's wonderful to be able to share that moment with him. And yeah, that I mean, first of all, that Aidan Baldwin goal, which comes out of the blue early doors in the second half, from 30 yards, and from such an unlikely scorer. And then yeah, Jody Jones with that goal in stoppage time, I hope will live with me forever.
Is there any other commentary moments that also stand out to you in your career?
Yeah, odd little random ones. Notts County's FA Cup run, when they went to Brentford, old Brentford at Griffin Park, before they moved to the G-Tech, where John Stead picks up the ball on the right wing. And I said something to the effect of, is he going to hit this? Because he cuts in off the right wing and he's about 5 or 6 yards outside of the penalty area on his left foot. And I said, is he going to hit this? And he bang hits it and he wraps it into the far corner. And I went, yes, he is, or something like that. And that got played on Match of the Day, the FA Cup Match of the Day show, which was kind of cool. So yeah, little moments like that. There was the daft goal that Michael Doyle scored. It felt like a nothing night, FA Trophy game at home against somebody I can't remember, and he scores from the halfway line right at the end, because otherwise we were going to have to go to a replay on the following Tuesday night, and he scored from the halfway line, and that went viral because I went mental, started listing how old he was and things like, Michael Doyle, you're 38 years old, have you ever scored a goal? So just get carried away by the moment. And I think there's something to be learnt from that. Like, listen, every commentator does things their own way. Some prepare, not prepare, well, some maybe do. Some will have an idea of a line in their head if a certain player scores, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if that player's like approaching a big milestone or something like that. But that was something completely out of the blue, and was just showed the benefits of being completely unprepared and just letting your emotions take you wherever they take you, because in instances like that, you're supposed to reflect the shock of the fans, and I guess I probably did that. So yeah, a few little bits and bobs from over the years.
You obviously mentioned lockdown a few minutes ago. For a fan's perspective, the whole lockdown experience in football was horrible, and we had to rely on guys like you, guys like Colin Frey for the Forest fans. But what was it like from your side of the commentary? Because obviously, like I said, we had to rely on people like you. But what's it like from the commentator side in that experience of lockdown?
It was weird. In the stadiums, it was soulless and it was empty, and it reminded you of why we love the game in the first place. And it isn't necessarily the moment on a match day from 3 o'clock until 10 to 5. It's often about everything that goes around it. The community, the friends, the family, the people that you only maybe see at the football. And in 6-8 weeks' time, people will say, right then, take care, see you soon, have a good summer, and won't see them again until August or whenever. And yeah, it was. The one benefit was that you managed to get away from grounds quickly at the end because you didn't have to queue out the car parks. But that was it, because everything else about it was soulless. And also there was a time where the BBC moved us in-house. So we had to commentate off tube. And that came with its own challenges, particularly less so in the Championship, as Forest were in at the time, but particularly in the National League where Notts were, because you would be commentating off of one camera, which sometimes I swear might have been a phone, which is pivoting on the halfway line. And particularly, I remember those Tuesday night games, like somewhere far-fetched, and the floodlights wouldn't have been great, and you're trying to identify players. It was a real challenge, and you were at the mercy of the stream. I remember there was a night where I think Jim O'Brien scored a hat-trick for Notts, and so he took a penalty, and he put the ball down on the spot, and he walked back, and the stream froze, and I was like, So I had faith that it might have been blind faith and stupid faith, but fortunately the stream kicked back in again, and when the stream kicked back in again, the penalty had already gone in. But what I did was I had faith that it will come back and I will know what's happened. And so, like, I remember Stal and I had someone to my right, it was the presenter, both going, oh my God, what are we going to do? And I kind of, like, I was just like, I just indicated like that. And I commentated as if he was just taking extra time to take the penalty, so that nobody who was listening would have known. But it was just like it was an extra long build up to the penalty. And then I commentated as if the ball had, I said, and I just kept it real general. And Jim O'Brien scores, blah, 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 blah. Not scared. And then fortunately, a couple of replays kicked in. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how he scored. So yeah, it came with a lot of challenges. And listen, fingers crossed we never have to do that again.
Fair enough. And in terms of you saying, you've had some really amazing games that you've very happy to have commentated for. Are there any particular games in the future that you would love to be able to commentate for?
I thought you were about to ask me what are the worst games you've ever.
We'll get onto that later. That's fine. That's coming later.
Look, I have the same wish list as any commentator or budding commentator. We all want to go and commentate at World Cups. I all want to commentate on an FA Cup final, or like top level week in, week out Premier League football, or a Euros, anything like that. Those would be obvious dreams. But you need to be good, but you need a bit of a break along the way as well. You need the right people. We talked about earlier how subjective it is. You need the right people to think that the way that you paint the canvas is the right way for them. There's another thing that people don't bear in mind enough, is the importance of not being an idiot and being good to work with and being nice, because you can be as talented as you like, but if you're not good to work with when you're on the road with people, you might be traveling all over Europe or beyond, working long hours, being around people aren't going to want to work with you. So that's another part of it. We've all got a wish list, but there's more than just, I would think, like talent and ability that goes into it.
Would being a people person almost be a must-have attribute as a commentator then?
You're telling stories about people, aren't you?
Yeah.
So a lot of my research, say I mentioned it earlier, let's say 12, just as a ballpark figure, of that 12 hours worth of research, some of that will be spent talking to local journalists who watch the football clubs week in, week out. Some of that might be spent talking to the press officers of the respective football clubs, so you're dealing with people. But the biggest chunk of that 12 hours is spent on researching the players and their stories and their backstories. And a lot of it will not make it to air, but it's still worth knowing. There was a lad at Grimsby last week who had gone on trial to AC Milan as a teenager for 6 weeks, and it hadn't worked out. He didn't even play in the game. So it was a lovely fact that I never got to use until now, which, that's handy. But I can't remember his name right now, but I had it written down, obviously. And so, yeah, it's the football business, but it's the people business. That's what we are connected to. Like, look at what all anybody wanted to talk about after the League Cup final on Sunday was, first of all the hangovers. And second of all, Dan Burn, like, what a story. Boy from Blythe, told he was too tall, too gangly, too, uncoordinated to become a professional footballer. Had to go on all of, really build his way up. And here's a man now who, he gets his first England call up at 33 years old, scores the goal for his boyhood club, the first goal at Wembley in a Wembley final for, decades for that football club. It's a story. That's what we're invested in. Yeah, we're invested in the game, but we're invested as much in the game as we are as the people who are playing the game.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you've done stuff at Old Trafford in the past and other big venues. Is there like a particular stadium that you love to do coverage from? Like, if you're told you go into a place, you're like, yes, get in, I'll get to go back to there, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really good grounds to go to, where for different reasons, right? So after you've been doing it a while, one of the reasons why you might like going to somewhere is because the food's great. So, for instance, Stamford Bridge, you'll be thrilled to hear, the food's amazing. And Tottenham, I haven't been to the new Tottenham ground yet. I was supposed to go there, and the Queen died. And obviously all the games got scrapped. So I didn't get to go there. But I'm going there for the first time in a couple of weeks' time. And I've been told that the food's amazing at Tottenham. So look forward to that. Some are great because of the commentary position itself. So if you think of a lot of people think, I wonder what the Emirates is like. The Emirates, you're kind of tucked down underneath a roof, so you can't really see when the ball goes anywhere above 15, 20 yards in the air. You don't know where the ball's gone until it comes back down again. Chelsea's a bit similar, to be fair, in the press box at Stamford Bridge, but there are some press boxes where you're like right in amongst the fans, the perfect distance back from the pitch. Like Newcastle, it's only a problem when it rains because the wind blows the rain in, but you're not too close to the pitch, but you're not too far up as well, and you can you're almost close enough that you can hear the players at times, even in such a loud stadium, or you can hear what the coaching staff are saying on the near touchline. Goodison has its charms, which we obviously won't see beyond this season. It's an incredibly tight press box with a pillar which is miraculously placed that no matter where you're sat in that press box, it always feels like that pillar is blocking almost the entire goal at one end. But so far as perspective, it's great. You're a certain distance back, and then there are obviously the ones that you dream of, commentating at. I'd love to commentate at the new Bernabeu. I'd love to commentate at the new camp. Places like that. Albeit, from what I hear, you're a million miles away from the pitch, so it's probably worth bringing binoculars with you.
I mean, I got the chance, luckily enough, to speak to Colin Frey last year, and he said about Manchester United, and apparently it's really bad there because you're so tightly congested into a small box, and you don't get much room to move, and you'd expect it to be better at a club like Manchester United. Obviously, they're going to get a new stadium, but when you hear about clubs like that, is it a bit surprising in a way?
Well, it varies, it varies. And that, bear in mind, that press box is getting on a bit. It's been in place for a long time, and there may well be more demand for those seats now than there was when it was first built. It's carpeted, which might sound insignificant, but in the cold winter months, a carpeted press box is actually quite welcome. The view's good from there, albeit you are a bit to the right of the halfway line, but you're a good distance from the pitch. But yeah, it's a cramped press box, but there's a lot of press boxes that are cramped. There aren't many which are wonderful, spacious oases. Like Leicester City's is good. Like Leicester's press box, I would say is like probably as good as anywhere you're going to see, because the desks are big, they're deep as well, so you can stick plenty of notes and research on it. The view's good, you're just to the left of the halfway line. So it varies. There are drawbacks to pretty much all of the press boxes, and there are also positives to them as well. It's just a bit of a balance. Who's the Leicester fan in the room?
The guy behind the camera.
Let's not talk about Leicester. I mean, poor fella.
Now, I've heard of some commentary boxes being up ladders and things like that, where once you're up there, if you need toilet, you haven't really got a choice other than a water bottle. Am I correct in that statement?
I guess yes, but I think everybody would know ahead of time that
So you're prepared.
You ain't getting down from here.
Yeah.
So don't drink too much. To be fair, like even at the City Ground, yeah. So obviously you have the press box that you'll know, but then there's also the gantry.
Yeah.
Once you're up on that gantry, you're not really getting down until half time at the earliest, and you have to duck and duck and duck under all these beams to get up there. But there's no like porter cabin up there or anything like that. I went to Exeter City a few years ago, and that was then as they were redeveloping things up a ladder, and you had to use a pulley system to get all your kit up to this tiny little bit of scaffolding, effectively, where you kind of had to crouch all game long, end up on the drive back with terrible neck ache. But that would have been one of those as well where you're like, I'm in trouble if I need to get out here. And in fact, I know Colin Frey, and I think it was Steve Hodge, went down to St James's down there for the FA Cup tie recently, and they came back and they were saying like there's a new press box there now. But again, they were faced with the same sort of situation. They were stuck there for pretty much all night, and that was an even longer game than usual because of the injury when Taiwo broke his nose, but also all of the issues with extra time. And so there are a few antiquated ones, but they're few and far between now.
I've seen you've not just done commentary, you've also done interviews with players and managers in the past. Is there one player or manager that you've thought of at the time, I can't believe I'm interviewing them, or is it like something you look back on a lot?
I interviewed Kobe Bryant, the great Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant, which was, terrifying. How old are you guys? Sorry.
I'm 20.
Almost 25.
Yeah, so I would have been 22 at the time, something like that. He was one of the first people that I had ever really interviewed, because I've always loved basketball. So I put myself in a position to be able to go down, and the Lakers were here in the UK playing against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I, went down and had to interview a bunch of the players, one of whom was Kobe Bryant. And there was this like media scrum around him. The Americans do their media availability well different to what we do. Here it's like you are pre-selected who you are going to talk to by the club's media team. Whereas in America, it's almost a free-for-all. And so this huge scrum formed around Kobe. And the American journalist who clearly Kobe knew from Los Angeles, real smooth fella, had camera up with him and asked him 2 or 3 questions. And then, like, I was stood just to Kobe's left with my microphone and obviously waiting for one of the other 12 or 14 journalists to ask a question. And nobody did. And I was like, so Kobe, you just might as well step up. I was like, so Kobe, how you like in the UK? And at that point, you really want him to like effervesce with like words and character about how wonderful the UK is. But he just went, it's beautiful, man. And I did not have a follow-up question ready. And I was, stuttering because I was so nervous that I was talking to a guy like this. But it was actually a really good learning opportunity to, sort of put everything that was to come in context. Like, I couldn't be more nervous to have interviewed anybody than Kobe Bryant. And so after that, everybody that I've interviewed since, it's all kind of been put in context by starting like that.
Amazing. Well,
What about your normal ending question?
yes, my final question is, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who wants to do what you do, what would it be?
It's not just one piece of advice, but I am also conscious that you're running out of time with the recording. So, but it's not just one piece of advice. Work hard, do your research, be nice. But beyond all of that, and it's something that I wish I'd known early doors, get your grounding by all means, wherever you can get your grounding, as in get your air miles, learn everything that you can, but never take your eye off the ball for where you want to get up and where you want to end up and get to. That is really important. And don't wait until you feel 100% ready to make the jump to the place that you eventually want to end up, because you'll never feel 100% ready. Go when the opportunity is there. Yes, get your grounding, but then go to where you eventually want to end up. Because once you get to where you want to end up, you are to an extent going to have to prove yourself all over again. So get your grounding and then keep the main thing, and go for it almost as soon as you can once you've got a bit of a grounding, because that is going to only stand you in good stead further down the line.
I genuinely think that's probably the best answer we've had to that question.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
thank you very much. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys, for watching the podcast. Me and Keane really enjoyed it. Do check out all of our stuff down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much.